How's it? There is a thing in photography where people are obsessed with light, and you get many books like this. This is The Excellent Direction and Quality of Light by Neil van Niekerk, and those are fantastic books. Light is, of course, at the heart of photography. But for every piece of awesome light that we have available to us, there is also a shadow. And I wanted to shine a light on shadows because they have, I think, more than anything else, influenced my own photographs over the course of my career. We are all familiar as photographers with shadows in one form or another, be it hard shadows you get from that midday sun's right above. They're very defined and they're aggressive, they're in your face. Often people think about them as a problem to overcome. And then there's the opposite end of that spectrum where it's a completely cloudy, overcast day and the sky is one giant softbox and those shadows become completely indistinct and almost ineffectual. And that kind of leads me into the first thing that has influenced the way that I think about shadows in my photography is the shadow going to be an active participant, that hard angular shape? Or is it going to be a supporting member of the cast? A good way of thinking about this, if you look at Herb Ritz's photography, which I featured earlier on the channel, his photographs make absolutely fantastic use of hard angular shadows. Those shadows create shape and form. So the shadow itself is an active participant in that scene. And often in my own photography, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for shadows. And it seems a little bit contradictory that because photography is all about light and we get told about, beautiful golden hour light and all that kind of fantastic stuff, the God rays that make for extremely beautiful photographs. That's not what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for the shadows. What are the results of all this lovely lighting? And that's when I started to make a bit of a change in the photography, because all of a sudden there was a whole bigger scope for things to photograph. But I had to draw on sort of ideas that I'd kind of forgotten over time with my photographs, which was that there's a language to photography. Some basic ideas, and often you'll find them in books much like this one here, which I've got just leaning up to. So this is The Excellent Art of Seeing by Kodak. And in there, it breaks down all sorts of ideas, but it comes back to a couple of points. Shape and form. Those two ideas, those two concepts in my own photography have really, that's what's made my own personal work what it is now. And neither of those two aspects can really be put into place without shadow. So it's shadows that are bringing the light into my own photography. And by bringing shape and form and texture often, I'm able to create abstract photographs that lend themselves to my own aesthetic. And had I been focused purely on light, I don't think that I would have got the same effect in regards to the way that I now tend to see the world. There are many photographers who employ shadow in a variety of ways. I've just talked about shape and form, but if you contrast color with shadow, shadow has this wonderful effect on color. All of a sudden, it takes what can be quite a drab, wishy-washy kind of color and make it punchy, make it vibrant. This is one of those things at play. You often see it when you're driving down a road and the sun's setting behind you. And if it's a clear day, that light it's okay. We're not talking about golden hour light. I'm talking about, when the sun's behind you. And it washes out the colors. But if there is a storm cloud in the horizon, something dark, the colors of the trees, of the houses, all that kind of stuff, they start to really pop because they're contrasted against a darker element. So in your own photography, if you want to make color pop, then find a contrast, find some sort of shadow that you can put it against. Pete Turner, I've often mentioned him on the channel. He's a fantastic exponent of this, but there are many other people whose work make use of shadows to make the colors leap off the page. Another way of employing shadows as a creative force is to be found in somebody like Alex Webb. Now, I talk about Alex Webb an awful lot on the channel, and the work is fantastic. And again, he's just one of many people who employ this technique. But when you look at his photography, you have the shadows acting as framing devices to bring the eye into the image, to show what Alex is interested in, to break down that sort of fairly standard rectangle into bizarre shapes. Picture in your mind's eye, if you can, these images with lots of shadow detail, where the shadows are equally rich in information as the highlight areas. And the photographs, I won't say they stop working, but they lose some of that impact, not just from a visual impact, because this employment of shadows as framing techniques gives you a visual punch, but just from a kind of a point of view also of making the image less defined. We are all familiar with silhouettes in the world, and therein lies another power of shadow, is that if I show you a silhouette of a building or a silhouette of a profile of a face, you know these are buildings and you know there are faces. We've been trained since birth to recognize shape. And what happens that's quite interesting is your mind starts to fill in the blank, as it were. The silhouette of a profile, we imagine the face. Everybody imagines a different face. And that can lend an air of mystery to your photography. When you employ lots of deep, dark shadows, then there's places in that image for the viewer's mind to paint in things. It's much like if somebody's looking at something out of a frame, you want to say, well, like, what are these people looking at? That air of mystery is, I think, often overlooked when thinking about the use of shadows in photography. Up until now, these have been the main players. These have been the shadows that want to stand on the stage and be an active participant in the image itself. But there's also that supporting cast of shadows, because sometimes you don't want to have that very in-your-face, angular look to your photography, that you just want to create a bit of shape, a bit of form. And when you employ that soft sculpting effect, I think about it more as like that light is molding maybe some soft clay. It's not bashing it with a scalpel. It's just helping to give the object that I might be photographing a bit of a form, but not a form that dominates. Think about snow, and in a soft light, it's got a very creamy, very smooth tonality to it. It feels soft, even though obviously snow is quite cold and is. I don't think snow's soft. Do you think snow's soft? Anyway, so that's by the by. But these are the things. It's got that sort of embrace. I often talk about light embracing and wrapping around, especially in portrait photography. But if you get rid of all the shadows, then whatever you're photographing loses any of this form. So always be mindful of using the softness of a shadow. If your photograph is lacking something, if you feel this doesn't feel quite real, it doesn't feel quite like it's got some depth to it, it's usually because you've either overlit something, or you've filled in a bunch of shadows, or you've taken them away, or you're not employing them in a way that is at least making the object you're photographing feel like it's real, like the person who's looking at the photograph could reach out and could touch it. These are the powerful and amazingly atmospheric and simple ways that you can employ shadows within your photography. It certainly changed my perspective when I looked at shadows as the main player in my own photographs. And if you want to see how Herb Ritts employed shadows in his images to create some stunning, iconic photographs of fashion people and celebrities from the 1990s, check out this video over here. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.